Frequently, we'll need to be able to create, move, copy, delete files and directories just to help keep our systems organized, make configuration changes, do work. Generally speaking, when we're working with computers, we're working with a lot of different files. So we'll learn how to do that in Linux from using the command line interface. We'll use the touch command to create files. We'll use mkdir to make directories. We'll move files and rename files with mv, copy files with cp. We'll use the wildcard character for matching, and we'll use rm to remove. So realize that most of these, except for touch, they just take all the vowels and just get rid of them. So these commands are so common that they wanted to make the syntax just as compact as possible. All right, so we're going to touch some files. So we're logged into our system. We want to make sure that we're in our home directory. So I'm going to run pwd, print my working directory. Yeah, I'm in my home directory. If you just run cd and hit enter, that will also take you to your home directory if you don't happen to be there already. So that's good. We're going to create some files here, because if I list, I've got nothing here right now. So we're going to start. Actually creating some content here. So I'm going to use the touch command to create a new empty file. So I'm going to touch u.txt. Now in the Linux world, the extension doesn't really matter. I'm using a .txt extension by convention, but technically you can name it anything you want. If I run ls now, I can see that I've got a file named u.txt. If I run ls-l, I can see that file 0 bytes long. It's empty. So touch just created a file for me. Generally speaking, I like to create a file before editing it, but that's just me. So let's create another file. We created u. We're going to touch me.txt. Got some sweet Caroline goodness going on here. Now I should have two files here. Notice that Linux doesn't tell me, yeah, I did it. I went ahead and I created it. When I said touch me.txt and ran that command, Linux didn't give me a success or failure message. No news tends to be good news in the Linux world. So our files are there. Good enough. Let's make a directory, because maybe we want to organize these, and we want to move these files somewhere else. So I'm still in my working directory of /home/Ubuntu. So I'll mkdir, all one word, and then the name of this directory. And I'm going to call this directory my docs. So mkdir my docs. So now if I ls, I've got two text files, and I've got my docs directory. You can see it's highlighted in blue there to show that it is a directory. Or if I run ls-l, I can see it's got that D attribute there, meaning it is a directory. So all that's good. So if I want to move me.txt into my docs, I can move me.txt space my docs. So what file am I moving and where do I want to move it to? So Linux is smart enough to know that my docs is a directory that does exist. So it's going to take that me.txt and put it in that directory. Did it work? I hope so. No news is good news in the Linux world. Again, so I'm in home Ubuntu, my docs is a directory. If I run ls my docs, that's going to show me the contents of that child my docs folder, and I see that me.txt is inside it. So that's good. So let's move u.txt in there so that they're right next to each other. So you can pause the video, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how to do it right now. I'm going to move u.txt into my docs. No news is good news. Is it there? How would I check? Let's double check. I'm going to list the contents of the my docs directory, and I should have those two files there. So touch created a file. mkdir is what we use to make a directory, and we can use move to move a file from one directory to another. The instructions say to change directories. I'll cd my docs and then just ls, and there's those files also. So cp is used for copying files. We're going to go back to our home directory. So I'll cd just with nothing, just the cd command will take me back to my home directory. I'm going to print it out with pwd. We're going to go back there again. Why? Just because we're like that. Creating some muscle memory, hopefully, moving around our file system. me.txt and u.txt, they're empty. We're going to create a file with some content just using a special syntax. We're not using a text editor. We're just going to take some text and dump it into another file. So I'm going to echo. This just prints out contents, usually to your terminal interface, but this time we're redirecting that echo into the contents of a new file we're creating called config.txt. So I'm going to echo very important config greater than config.txt. So this is similar to a pipe character where we're taking the input from one command and throwing it into another command. Here, instead of taking the output of the echo command and redirecting it to a program, we're just dumping it into a file. So if I run that, I can ls to list my files. Now I've got three. I've got me.txt, u.txt, and config.txt. I can run ls-l, and I see that config.txt has 22 bytes, so it's more than 0, so it's got some contents in there, which is good. It's what we want. We can use the cat program to print out the contents of that. It stands for concatenate and print. So I'm going to cat config.txt. And I see the contents here in my terminal. It just spit it out there. Very important config. So that's good. So we're cruising. We're creating files, copying files, all that stuff. Well, we haven't copied anything yet. Take that back. We moved files. Let's copy a file. Lots of times before we're making a change to a configuration file, we want to create a backup. Why? Because sometimes we screw stuff up. So we want to have a backup plan. Part of our backup plan might be making a copy of our data before we make any changes to it. So I'm going to list the contents of this directory again. I've got my config file there. So before I make a change, I'm going to cp copy config.txt. And I'm going to give it, what's the name of the new file that I want copied? I'm going to call it config_backup.txt. Some people call it config.txt.bak for a backup. That's a pretty common convention, but it doesn't really matter what you name it as long as you know what it's named. So I'm going to run ls-l to list my files with the file size here. They're both 22 bytes long. You can see that my new file was modified 2 minutes later, so it took me 2 minutes to explain what I was doing. And yeah, we're good. I could have done ls-al to it would show the dot directories, the parent and current directory, but in this case, we didn't really need that A in there, but it doesn't hurt anything to add it in there. So this is good. Now if I'm doing a change, I can make changes to my config file, and if I screwed something up, I can delete it. So we already created a directory, but we're gonna do a little bit more just to practice. If I do cd tilde/mydocs, this is an absolute reference to my mydocs folder. This is saying go to /home/ubuntu/mydocs. So no matter where I was, if I ran this command, it's always going to take me here. Like, I'll just show you real quick. If I happen to be in the /etc directory, and I did cd tilde/mydocs, it's going to take me into my home directory, into that mydocs subdirectory. So I want to make sure I'm in home Ubuntu my docs. So let's make Sweet Caroline. Make dir Sweet Caroline. My arms are wrapped around my microphone, so my typing is somewhat awkward, but that's all right. So no news is good news. I've got a couple files here. I'll update my instructions because I didn't include the config text files here in this directory, but that's all right. We can move all these text files into the Sweet Caroline directory. Now we could move them one by one. I could say move me.txt to Sweet Caroline. I could do that 4 times, or I could move all these text files at once. Here's where we can use the wildcard matching. So if I move star.txt into Sweet Caroline and hit enter, again, no news is good news. I can cd into Sweet Caroline, run ls. All my text files are there. So if we want to do work on a lot of files all at once, we can use the wildcard match, that star character. So our files are there. Yeah, I'll update my instructions to make sure those missing ones are there. Now let's say we're done with these files. We don't want them anymore. I'm gonna just list them again. I've got 4 files here. I can delete them one by one. So if I can delete rm me.txt. That's going to remove the file. There's no recycle bin. This file is going to be gone. It's going to be hard to restore. It's not really deleted, but for all intents and purposes, it's hard to get back if we do this. So be careful. Linux is just going to let you do it. So now if I list these, I should just have 3 text files left. So yeah, I've got my config files, and then I've got u.txt, but me.txt no longer exists there. So this is good. This is what we want. Everything is working just as we expected. So we want to make sure that we're still in the Sweet Caroline directory. We can see visually that we are, but hey, pwd always helps just to verify that we're there. I'm going to make a directory called imempty. So now if I list what's in here, we can see I've got a new directory there. But let's say we don't need that directory anymore. We want to clean up after ourselves. We don't want to make a mess of our file system. So I'll try to rm remove imempty here. It says I can't delete it. Like, what the heck? But I want to delete it. I don't care if it's a directory or not. Do what I want. Well, we have to use a special syntax here. The rm-r, in this case, the -r stands for recursive. So it's going to delete not just files and folders in the current directory, but it can delete subdirectories also. So if I recursively delete imempty, did it do it? Well, let's check. Let's run ls. Yeah, imempty no longer exists. But we still have our files there. Okay, I cleared my screen because I forgot to unpause my recording while I fix something. Here I'm in my Sweet Caroline directory, and I've got my text files. But let's say I want to delete this whole Sweet Caroline directory. How can I do that? Well, I'm going to change directories, cd space ... and I'm going to rm-r Sweet Caroline. This time, instead of typing out Sweet Caroline, I'm going to type swe and then hit tab. Because there's only one file or directory here that starts with swe, Linux will fill this in for me. So I use tab completion all the time because I'm very typo prone. That last slash is optional. I'll leave it there. So I just deleted that directory and all the files within it. So now if I ls, my docs is empty. So I just deleted a directory and all of the contents of that directory with just that one rm-r command. So want to be careful with that, because you could potentially delete tens of thousands of files with one command, and Linux is like, just, you asked for it, I'm gonna do it for you. It's not gonna prompt me, are you really sure you want to delete this? It is possible in Linux to create files and directories with spaces, although by convention it's rarely done just because it's kind of annoying to work with. So generally speaking, you'll use underscores or just mash all the words together when creating files or directories, but it does work. So here we're in our My Docs directory. I'll make a directory called, with quotes, it space works. So those quotation marks won't be part of the directory name, but putting the quotation marks makes sure we don't create an it directory and a works directory. So now if I list this, notice that the output, it puts in single quotes, it works, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So if we touch and then quotes, I'm a file.txt, now we can list the contents. And again, it's putting single quotes around it just to show that I don't have a file named ima and a file called file.txt. It's one file name. So we can remove these. But if I try to rm ima file.txt, it's like, notice what the rm command does. It tried to delete something called ima, and then it tried to delete something called file.txt. We don't want to do that. We want to rm, got to put the quotes this time, ima file.txt. No news is good news. So when the command failed, it gave us an error message, but when it succeeded, everything just worked fine. And then we can rm quote it works with that -r recursive flag. And if I list the files, it's not there anymore. So let's practice. So create a new directory with the name of a fruit. So I'll make dir banana. Create 3 files in the new directory with the names of people you know. So I'm going to do that, I'm going to change directories. That's just easier. cd banana. So I'll touch gym.txt, touch cam.txt, touch l.txt. So I've got 3 text files in here. Rename the files to names of different colors. So I'll move gym.txt to red.txt. I'll move cam.txt to black.txt. And I'll move elia.txt to pink.txt. Red, black, and pink. All right. Now if I list these, I've got 3 colors. Delete the files one by one. All right, so I'm going to use the rm command. I could rm star.txt, but that's not what the instructions say. It says one by one, so I'll rm black.txt. I'll use tab completion, rm pink.txt, and rm red.txt. Delete the directory. So I'll cd dot, then I'll rm r banana. Boom. No more banana folder there. So make sure that you're comfortable creating files, deleting files, moving files, copying files. This helps us keep us organized, and when we're following instructions, we just want to make sure we're putting files in the right spot.